The Holy Gospel according to Matthew, the 18th chapter. Jesus said to the disciples, "If another member of the church sins against you, go and point out the fault when the two of you are alone. If the member listens to you, you have regained that one. But if you are not listened to, take one or two others along with you, so that every word may be confirmed by the evidence of 2 or 3 witnesses. If the member refuses to listen to them, tell it to the church. And if the offender refuses to listen even to the church, let such a one be to you as a Gentile and a tax collector. Truly I tell you, whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. Again, truly I tell you, if 2 of you agree on earth about anything you ask, it will be done for you by my Father in heaven. For where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, I am there among them." The Gospel of the Lord. So every spring I visit my doctor. It's an annual ritual. I've been doing it for 20 plus years now. It's been 3 doctors over that time, but it's always the same kind of thing. You get some lab work done, you go into the office, and you have a chat. They do some number checking. Sometimes they check body parts to make sure they're all working okay. Generally, they compare last year's numbers to this year's numbers, and they hope that things are about the same. Occasionally, they have suggestions for you. You can lose a little weight. Maybe try these vitamins. That might help with this particular issue. One year I was having tennis elbow, and I couldn't figure out what to do, and the doctor said, "Aleve." And sure enough, that did the trick. And now I don't have tennis elbow, and I don't have to use Aleve, but it was just a simple thing. I hardly ever go being sick. So it feels kind of strange to be in a doctor's office, because most of the other people sitting there, or at least used to be sitting there, had issues. I didn't have these. But I go because my doctor is kind of a sentinel. Someone who is watching my progress to make sure that nothing more serious is about to happen to me. The doctor begins to understand my physical conditions, all the pieces that are happening, and knows what should be at my age and my condition and all the rest, and is taking care that nothing worse befalls me down the road. Same reason we take our cars in for their 5,000-mile tune-up or their 3-month or whatever. Same reason we're supposed to at least occasionally scan our computers to make sure there's nothing really wrong with them. And if we have one, we should visit our financial advisor, perhaps not today, but on a day when we feel like we need to have a conversation about whether the way that our resources are allocated will actually survive long enough for us to use them. We check in with people so that we have some idea of what we need to do to prepare for what's coming. The sentinel, the watchman, a lookout. That was Ezekiel's role. God called him to be a lookout for the people of Israel, and to be the one to warn them if they were not going down the path that God intended for them. To warn the wicked of the consequences of their actions. And even more, to warn the wicked because God did not actually want the wicked to suffer the consequences of their actions. God wanted the sentinel to speak to the wicked and to those who were failing to live according to God's plan so that they might change their paths. The year that I went to the doctor, and my doctor said, "You've gained 20 pounds since last year. You used to gain a pound a year. This is not sustainable. What might you do about that?" I started walking. And perhaps I changed some of my diet. And by the following year, most of that weight had gone away. I changed my habit because he suggested that if I kept this up, I would be a much wider person than I currently am. I wasn't going to get shorter, but I was going to get wider. I listened because I didn't want the consequences of where I was headed. God desires humanity to be restored to him. God desires that the relationships which God intended to have with humanity is the direction toward which we go. And that when we wander off into other worlds, when we wander off to do other things, when we find ourselves in the wrong place, God wants to call us back, to invite us back, to let us know that the reason he's pointing this out to us is because he doesn't want us to end up on the wrong path forever. And God is so insistent on continuing to remind us of that, that God is even willing to come and dwell among us. To be embodied in the flesh in Jesus, the Nazarene, whom we know to be the Son of God. And through him to show people a different path, a different way, a life-giving way. To reach out to those who feel as if they have been forgotten and to call them home. And to point out to those who have mistreated those who have been forgotten of the consequences of their actions. And to invite them to reconsider how they live with one another. Paul sums it up very nicely. Love one another. In that way, we fulfill all the commandments that God has ever given. If we are concerned about the neighbor and the neighbor's good, then we will have fulfilled all the commandments that God has for us. For all the commandments are ways to prevent bodily harm to the neighbor or to the neighbor's reputation or to the neighbor's property, whatever it might be. If we have love for that person, then we will not harm their stuff. It will be a much better way for us to live. It will be a much better way for others to live. God calls us, warns us, wakes us up, so that we might recognize when we have strayed from the path, when we have wandered in a different way, when we have chosen to do a different way of life than the one that is life-giving for us. Jesus knows how tough that is. Jesus recognizes the challenge that gives, and how quickly we are to engage with one another in ways that are not beneficial. So even before he ascends, before he is crucified, before the church ever is established, Jesus provides these guidelines of how we can work together so that we can be restored to one another. So that the little tiff I've had with you doesn't become a full-blown incident that cannot be restored. Jesus warns us that we will find ourselves in difficult situations even when we belong to the church. Hard to believe that within the church people don't always treat each other well. Jesus says, let's not get that path going very long. And so he calls us, invites us, puts a sentinel in our midst to say, not that way, but this way, which gives life to us all.